Hey, this is Dave. You're about to watch my conversation with Jim Benson. I asked him to sit down and talk with me about how these tools that we use every day at work to stay connected with each other remotely across time and space, all these productivity tools that are supposed to help us work better together, and how the way that we're using them is actually the thing that's killing our productivity. I find myself spending more and more time hunting through streams of messages, trying to find one tiny piece of information, or having to go back and find a video of a meeting I missed about a meeting we're going to have so that we can have a meeting to plan to have another meeting. These things are supposed to make it easier for us to work together, but I think that the way that we're using them is causing the opposite effect for a lot of us. Before we get to the interview, I want to tell you about something that's coming up in the very near term. I'm recording this on Friday, December 13th, and this Monday and Tuesday, that's December 16th and 17th, I am going to be part of the Agile Network's December microconference. The theme of the conference is Agile, the Path to AI, and over the course of 2 days, we're going to have almost 80 sessions focusing on Agile, focusing on how we use Agile to learn more about artificial intelligence. It's packed full of really good stuff. I'm going to be leading one session on Monday with Galen Lowe from the Digital Project Manager, talking about what project managers have to do just to stay on top of all the things that are happening in AI. I'm also going to be leading a sprint planning reset. So for any of you who are on those teams that are dragging work from one sprint to the next, we can fix this. Come attend the reset. These sessions are actually going to be free. So 70 to 80 sessions over 2 days. If you're missing SEUs or PDUs, you need to get in before the end of the year, come sign up. Just go to theagilenetwork.com. You'll see a link to it. You'll see a list of all the different sessions that are happening. Come check one of them out. There's a ton of really good stuff in there. So I'm very much looking forward to it. I hope to see you there. And now on to the interview.
If you learn to work the old way, but the new way is what you need, my job's to make that switch from old to new. Suck less for you than it did for me. Here on Drunken PM Radio. Whoa! Here on Drunken PM Radio. Whoa!
Hey, this is Dave Prior. Welcome to The Reluctant Agilist. I'm here with Jim Benson, who's in the middle of a very busy, what is it? Power cyclone? I forget what
bomb cyclone.
Bomb cyclone. So hopefully we'll be able to get through before it takes over the entire power grid.
Yes.
But, how do you describe yourself when you meet people for the first time and they don't know who you are?
I'm Jim Benson, ex-punk rocker, business psychologist, I guess. And I am mostly interested in people going to work and being able to work without fear or trepidation.
Which is what we're going to talk about. So I've been going through this thing with a couple of clients where I wanted to talk about WIP, but I think to back up a little bit, most people that I talk to, when they think about WIP, they think just about limiting WIP. They don't think about all the other types of WIP that I know you spend a lot of time thinking about.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm noticing a thing where people that use online collaboration tools like Teams have meetings, and some people aren't there, so they have to have another meeting for those people. And then the people that weren't at that one have to go into Teams and figure out which of the 50 different chats from the different meetings they had that they missed is the one to look at because they all have the same name. And then they usually have to go and watch the video or read the transcript, and by then they forgot what the meeting was about in the first place, so they have to schedule another meeting. And it seems to me like that might be the silent evil killer of productivity, or one of the silent evil killers of productivity.
Mm-hmm.
But where people would say the pandemic taught us we can work remotely, I don't know if the tools have figured that out yet.
Well, the key to being able to work remotely is to have an understanding in your group about what information is needed by what people at what time, and then how that information is ingested. Okay. And I'm stunned, frankly, because you'll do this. We'll have meetings from Modus Institute, and then I'll record them, and then you'll watch them, and I'm like, you really watched that?
I do, because I want to know what's going on. I want to feel connected.
Right. I can't get through them myself. They'll go like blah 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 blah, and I'm like, could you all hurry up? It's like when there's a football game and then I miss it, and my wife's like, do you want to watch the recording of the football game? And I'm like, no.
Right. You just want to see who won.
Just tell me who won and like any weird stuff that happened in it. But what I don't want to do is watch every single play of something that takes 3 hours, that the only value of it was the emergent knowledge that was generated by watching it. what's going to happen next. So when we have a meeting with other people, theoretically, we're there because we want to decide something or build something or advance something or solve something. And that's all emergent stuff. So the excitement of being in a meeting is the emergent stuff, which is why status meetings suck so much, because it's all somebody telling you something that has no emergent qualities at all. It just says, this.
But when you're talking about a football game, there's somebody at the network who's pointing out like the plays that they should capture to show on whatever highlight reel, summarizing everything for you. And whereas the apps, the AI stuff is supposed to do that for us, it's kind of ham-fisted in its understanding of what matters and what doesn't.
Oh yeah, it's like somebody who has anybody who's ever been interviewed for something by any major type of media knows that they're selecting the messages based on whatever their internal filters are and not based on what you actually want to say.
Okay.
And that's not a slam on media or anything. That's just how human beings produce things. So the point of a good sports producer is that they understand what they can pull out and put into a highlight reel. But that's also a lot easier because the domain that they're working in is extremely understood by them.
Okay.
So the way that a system like that would have to work is that the AI that is pulling out the snippets for the highlight reel of the meeting would need to be trained on that over time, saying this snippet didn't work, this one did, and here's why.
Yeah.
And when you do those things, then it might work. But if you show me anybody that's training an internal system to do that, I will eat my hat.
Sell you a new AI tool.
Yes. Yeah, we need a new AI tool. That's exactly right. But the other thing about this, though, is just that what's happening is we have a group of people who need to collaborate. That group of people, for whatever reason, are not available to collaborate at a given point in time. And then we have to ask a couple questions. One is the reason for people not being available valid? Like, I had to be in this other meeting. Why did you have to be in that other meeting? Was that other meeting more important than the team moving forward?
Yeah.
If so, is there a better way for us to schedule our meetings so that we can make sure that critical mass of people are there? If you're not there, how do we make sure that you are comfortable with the results of whatever it is that we decided or did during the meeting? And that you understand that the team itself is moving forward as a group, and that sometimes various members of us will be part of the processing unit of the group, and sometimes we won't.
Which I think if you're all aligned around the same common, if you have clarity on the mission, then that would be okay. Like if I miss a Moda's call, I don't worry about any. I mean, I know the people that are there, I know what choices they make, and I'm sure I'd be willing to support them. But if you don't have that alignment, if you don't have that trust, then you get that FOMO thing.
Yeah. And also if we had a Modus call and it was all about how are we going to create more customer interaction for the Art of War class,
right?
And then you're like, I can't be there, and then we had the meeting anyway, that would be pretty toxic.
It would be challenging for me. Yeah.
Yes. We decided, Dave, that you need to have calls every single day at 1 a.m.
Which happens from time to time.
So then, you have to figure out, like, are the things that you're talking about, are they involving the right people at the right time?
So one of the things that I wanted to bring up that I've seen happen at companies is, let's say you got a team and they have this policy where if somebody's going to be out, they would mark it out in their calendar and Outlook or whatever. So not available. Okay. But then that means they're also putting all their personal appointments in there as well. And they invite everyone else on their team. So now I have to go accept that you have to go to the bank to get your safe deposit box. Shanthan has to do what he has to do. Kilby has to do what he has to do. That takes time and mind share. And then because everybody's so busy scheduling meetings, and even though they're marking it out, they're scheduling on top of each other, and they're scheduling when they're not available, which adds even more to the load, right?
Yeah. And and not only that, but let's make it even worse, where it's like,
why not?
We were given Project A, Project B, and Project C. Everybody's trying to work on all three projects at the same time. Every time we have a meeting about Project A, we end up talking about B and C a little bit. Every time we meet about B, we talk about A and C. Every time we meet about A, we talk a little bit about A and B. And then what that means is that every meeting becomes a meeting about everything.
Yeah.
And that the artifacts of the decisions that are made in those meetings are now distributed across a lot of different locations. And then nobody can find there is no one place to go to learn about Project A or Project B or Project C, because this group of constant collaborators are constantly talking about all the things that they're collaborating on. Yeah. And then you have to start to have additional meetings to try and find where the information is from the previous meetings. And then people start to get upset, and then you have meetings about people being upset.
So one of the things when you were just saying that I was thinking about was, and I'm going to pick on Microsoft, not because I have any axe to grind against Microsoft, but when SharePoint became a thing, people would put stuff in there and nobody could ever find it, because over the weekend, the guys from IT would reorganize everything and all the links were broken. And you could never find that lessons learned document that said, this is how we avoid that problem. But now you not only have SharePoint, I mean, I literally will have like 50 chats in Teams and somebody will say, it's in Teams.
Yeah.
That's an hour of me searching through stuff. I mean, it's like looking through Usenet to find a post that was 6 months ago.
Yeah. And that can be Discord or Slack or anything else. Yeah. Is that we do a really lousy job of managing how we communicate with each other. And then every time there is something that isn't quite right, that turns into either a full-on meeting or a micro meeting, which is just like me. You know, you're working away on something and all of a sudden Slack goes, and you look up and you're like, oh, and then you start talking about that. And then you have to come back and context switch back into what you were doing before. Yeah. And then what happens is if you do that 4 or 5 times, which is pretty much guaranteed at this point, then you start to get angry. You're like, stop interrupting me. And the other person on the other side is like, yeah. And they're just trying to get their work done. And you don't even notice that you've done the same thing to 6 other people throughout the day. Where's this? How's this? Can you meet with this? Are you busy? Are you there? Blah, 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 blah. Are you there has become an ubiquitous statement for all human beings working right now. Is shouting off into the ether of text messaging. Are you there?
So what does it do to somebody's brain?
What's that?
What does it do to someone's brain?
Like I said, the way I would put it is it just makes you mad. So what happens is when Dave Prior pings me and says, "Are you there?" The first thing that happens, because I have an action monitor over here, I have a communications monitor up here, and then I have a research monitor over to my right.
Oh wow!
Okay. And so what happens is while I'm writing, I will then look up there and I will see, oh, Dave Prior says this. And then my head switches into Dave Prior mode. Right. And it thinks about all of the things that I would want to say to Dave Prior and all of the things that he's asked me before so that I'm prepared to talk about those things. And so let's just say that for giggles, that's 15 things. Now, all of a sudden, I'm thinking about 15 things that have nothing to do with the document that I'm writing here or the research that's leading to it. Right. And that means I have to replace all of those things in my head with Dave Priorisms. And then those Dave Priorisms then later have to be unwritten when I go back to work. And so that creates that gap, that context switching gap. And I could bury you in terminology about it. But in essence, that's what's happening is you have a big block of knowledge. Yeah. And so the fallacy is that we think, oh, well, it's just a quick text message. But what it is actually you switching entirely into a social mode about something with someone that you know a great deal about. And that comes with all of that metadata. Yeah. Yeah. So when I look up there and I see Dave Prior up there, I think Karen Prior. I think Brooklyn. I think this. I think that. I think all of the things that would go along with that to put me into that context when I context switch. So it's not just context switching into a sentence, it's context switching into a zeitgeist, the Priorian Zeitgeist.
And as an example, so yesterday when I was working on resetting your password, it's like, oh, this will take 5 minutes. I log in, I spoof you so I can be you, and I go and I try a couple passwords and then it work. And then I spend a half an hour looking for really clever Robin Hitchcock lyrics to use as the password for you. And that was fun, but also like a complete not waste of time, but not I wasn't using the time in a way that would be sort of considered efficient, I don't think. I could have just given you a string of characters and it would have been less fun, but
yep.
And so that's going to drag on my time as well.
Yep. And so then the question for us all is, okay, in what part of that was waste?
See, and that's because me looking for that lyric and sending it to you and then you replying with other lyrics back is building rapport and connection and that shared love of his weird music. Possibly, I don't know if you share this, but not really understanding Captain Beefheart and just accepting that'll never make sense to me. But it's not moving the ball forward necessarily.
Yeah, well, and it's there. That's one of the things is that when if we just want to take the ball analogy and let's just say that we're playing
sports ball,
foosball, the more global football and not the American football or the Australian football. That when you're running down the field and someone has the ball, you're watching them, you're watching the defenders from the other team, and you're watching your other teammates so that you know that if the ball comes to you, what your options are. How can you shoot? How can you pass? How can you guard? How can you what? All of those things. And so you want that situational awareness. And weirdly enough, in this case, Robin Hitchcock lyrics were part of situational awareness.
Okay. Is it possible that's also like I'm thinking of all the things you would do on that field, and what if somebody ran up and went, hey, watch this cat video? Like if I was super stressed out about what was happening on the field, that cat video might provide me with a couple minutes of relief.
It might, as the other team ran right by you, and so there is a small. So let's just put it this way: if what you were doing at the time was manically putting your books in boxes because your house was about to be consumed by a very slow fire,
right?
You probably would not have gone to look for a Robin Hitchcock lyric. You probably would have gotten in there and said, "Here's your damn password," all lowercase, and sent it off. But at that point, your brain went through a cost-benefit analysis of can I have a little bit of fun with this and give myself a breather?
Yeah.
While you were doing that, because you weren't being attacked by a fire or someone with a ball or something else, your brain was able to spin a little bit and calm down from the otherwise annoyance of doing user management for an unfriendly platform.
Okay.
Right.
So maybe sometimes it's a necessary distraction or a healthy distraction.
Well, it's one of those things where it's like, when bosses show up and say, would you guys stop talking to each other and get to work? It's it's the exact same thing. You were having a conversation with me through finding that, even though I wasn't there.
Yeah. Okay.
And then when you sent it, it was obviously immediately appreciated because it was immediately set with it. You served up that quote and I hit you with literally without looking it up, the next line in the
song. Okay. So all of this got me thinking, I mean, I know you spent a lot of time focusing on creating more humane workspaces for people. And and that is a thing that's becoming increasingly prominent, at least what I see.
Mm-hmm.
But in the teams that I'm working with now, big companies, lots of process, tons of red tape, meetings are just par for the course, to the point where people have to eat during the meetings because they don't have time to have lunch anymore.
Mm-hmm.
They're late for every meeting because they're finishing up the last one. And it got me thinking, why is there not somebody who's going to come in and Marie Kondo your team setup and teach people how to use, because I'm wondering if it's am I just using Slack wrong? Or is it normal that it's going to take me a half an hour to find that message like 16 messages earlier in whatever the 50 threads are happening so that I can like do the next thing I have to do?
So Slack was always made to be instant messaging. It wasn't made to be a message repository. It's not a knowledge management tool.
But that's
and
what people use
searching
it
for some. Well, yeah, but that's fine. People also sometimes use vans as a deadly weapon, but it's not what vans are made for.
Yeah.
So you want to make sure that the tool that you're using is actually capable of what you're using it for, and not the best analogy I've ever given.
No,
but,
it's actually really. I mean, because I'm thinking if I'm a big company and let's say I have a site license with Microsoft, so the easiest thing for me to do is just say, well, we need a collaboration tool for all these people who are spread all over the planet. Teams is free; it's part of the setup. Let's just use that. But there's no intention behind, or any of these tools. There's no intention behind how are we going to organize it and maintain it in a way that works for the people instead of making the people work for the tool.
This is why when we do a right environment exercise, it's so surprising for people, because we end with literally a communications plan. Like, how is your team going to supply each other with the information that you need to do your job in a good way?
Yeah.
And so when people get together for the event, they're either expecting it's going to be a value stream map, which means it's going to be all about workflow, or it's going to be about the team charter part of it, which is all like fluffy and nice. But all of those things, your workflow, your culture, all of those are contingent on how well you inform each other and remain informed. And so one of the major things that we do in that is we list all of the information that the team needs, all of the ways that the team currently stores or retrieves or loses their information.
Right.
And invariably, we come up with dozens of places where an individual team will be hiding extremely important information.
Yeah.
And then it's a very emotional moment when people look at it and they say, oh my God, we're using Teams and Slack and Google Docs and this and this and this and GitHub and blah, 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 blah. And they'll come up with anywhere between 12 and 24 places that they're currently hiding information. They're like, God, no wonder we can't get our work
in
done.
their heads as well.
Yeah.
So I had a thing with one of these teams where we're trying to move them to Kanban, and the company uses Jira. But it was going to take like 2 weeks for the administrators to set up Jira in the way that the team needed it to be set up. So they can't use Jira. They still have to do it. And they ended up using the Kanban functionality in Microsoft Project. So they were using Project to learn how to do Agile in their work environment, which, I mean, that's like, I was looking at it, I'm like, what the hell's happening here?
But you're like, this is so poetically bad.
Yeah, but they find a way. The thing is, they find a way, and the way is not necessarily healthy.
Yep.
But it's all they have.
Yeah. No, and that happens all the time. It's like people say, well, we're going to do Agile, and then they like get Monday. It's like, really? It's you think, okay, I'm glad I'm a spectator. Let me get some popcorn and off we go. But I guess that the thing that this comes back to is that no matter where you are or what your team is, you're going to have access to certain people who are in certain situations to create certain things with certain tooling.
Yeah.
And how your people interact with each other directly relates to how you deploy the tooling.
Okay.
And then that deployment of the tooling in order to interact in a healthy way, that's your process. And if we can get people to recognize that our process is simply how we agree to communicate with each other,
okay,
and that enforcing that process is literally enforcing our culture at that point, because our culture is also how we would like people to communicate with us.
Yeah.
That then we can start to work towards ways that work will become less toxic, because toxicity is usually having information or decision making or agency withheld from you.
Okay.
And so the more that we visualize the work, the more that we know where the information is, then the more we have clarity and we can act with confidence. And that ends up defraying a lot of toxicity.
Okay. So one more question about this, and then we can talk about the course for a second. Some of these people that I've worked with, we taught them personal Kanban, and they started to use it, and they started to do it sort of at a team level, kind of. And they're very happy that they're moving cards. That was a big, amazing day for them, for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But there is no additional time given to working on the system or making the system more emergent or efficient for them.
Mm-hmm.
It's only about, we can move cards, the cards will help us get the work done.
Yep. No, the cards help you get work done, not the work done.
Work done, okay.
Yeah.
But I mean, what if I'm on a team and we're not devoting time to working on the system that we use? I mean, that, like, all the teams that skip retrospectives and stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
they're never sitting back and saying, is this actually working for us? They're just like, this is what we do. Like, this
Right.
is like.
And actually, if you wait until retrospective, it's just like this. It's like if you have a car and you drive it around and you drive it around and you drive it around, and then you wait for it to break, and then you take it to the shop.
Yeah.
And the person at the shop says, "Well, your everything is gummed up." You could have avoided everything being gummed up if you would have gone in for regular maintenance, or better yet, if you would just be able to understand better how an automobile operates.
Okay.
And so in the case of a team, we tend to wait until something's really messed up before we do anything. We have a retrospective or a Kaizen event or anything. We wait until the lagging indicator is more of a lagging klaxon.
Yeah.
we don't go. It goes bing, and we're like, oh, bing, and then it goes bing bing, and then bing bing, and then you wait until it's like meaner, and the plane's about to crash, and then we're like, oh well, maybe we should
pay
do
attention
something about this.
Yeah. Okay. So can you talk a little bit about the class?
The cleaning toxic waste class. So yeah, we on Modus Institute, we have a class called Cleaning Toxic Waste, and it is an ongoing discussion with 50 videos, because there's a lot of toxicity. It's terrible how we treat each other. But beyond the videos, there's a monthly gathering of people from around the world that we have just the most amazing conversations about how work works, how things go wrong, how people are currently being mistreated, different strategies for them to either mitigate or remove or just otherwise deal with the fact that something at work is actually painful.
Mm-hmm.
And the body or the brain processes emotional pain or stress the same way it processes physical pain. So when somebody is treating you poorly, or the system is treating you poorly, or you're forced to treat others poorly by the system, that actually manifests in you as physical pain, which then ends up having all sorts of future negative reactions. Like you can snap at other people, and then they'll snap at other people, and they'll snap at other people, and that works its way around, spreads the toxicity. Or you could start to develop heart palpitations, shortness of breath, others, rashes. And then the next thing you know, you're spending a week at home because you're sick. And that never needed to happen, because the point source of being sick was just this workplace toxicity, which generally grows from the fact that we are withholding the ability of people to get the information, the action, the decisions, or whatever that they need in order to get the work done. But the course is actually very reasonably priced. It's $100 and something at the moment, and it has just been so rewarding to be part of those calls. And so it's not like I, as an instructor, am driving the whole call. The calls are now very much community based.
Yeah.
And in fact, they happen sometimes when I'm not available. So it's on Modus Institute. If you just go there, I think it's the first thing that's up on the course page, but it's called Cleaning Toxic Waste. And we solve a lot of these problems using visual management tools.
Okay.
So Dave mentioned like the Kanban, but we also use the X matrix and storyboards and all sorts of things to specifically address different types of toxicity, because in general, when you make something visual, it becomes harder for that toxicity to continue.
Okay. And then they can use the system instead of being used by the system.
Exactly. And once that system is up, especially if you have a system that is self-regulating and is improving faster than waiting for a retrospective, then it's really, I'm not going to say it's easy, but a lot of toxicity just comes from our own neglect. And we can do something about that.
It's not always of ourselves and others and the process, like all of it.
Yeah. Okay. So the thing I'll say about that is it's not always just a jerk, but jerks are going to be hired more often if you have a toxic system, because people use this weird logic that says, oh, we just need someone to come in and make hard decisions. And it's like, no, that's actually going to make it worse. But that logic, that common sense is extremely hard to get around. So the more toxic your system is, the more likely it is that you'll hire new toxic leaders that will come in and just exacerbate
and protect the toxicity.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, this was great. Thank you very much. I know you got to go because you got to get to the bank and do stuff before the cyclone hits.
Yes.
But I appreciate you making time. And for anybody who's watching this, there will be a link in the show notes if you want to check out the course. And thank you, Jim.
All right. Thanks, Dave. See you all later.